Recently, an acquaintance asked, can you use Cricut Design Space to create shapes with faux stitching around them, similar to how the metal die cuts create that shape? And from within the Cricut system, do it using either the scoring tool or the cutting tool rather than the pen tool. That's a great question. I did a little experimenting, and the answer I came up with was, well, yeah, kind of, sort of, but not exactly. You can get some similar results by getting some faux stitching markings, but the marks are going to definitely be different because the way that a metal cutting die works is it presses into the paper to make the cut, and a cutting machine works by dragging a blade through the paper. And so the end result is going to look slightly different. But you can create some faux stitching marks using your Cricut cutter. And you can also use Cricut Design Space to create the shapes. They won't be quite as exact as if you created the shapes in an SVG file, but you can still do it. And here's a quick tutorial for one method of getting that accomplished. First, let's go ahead and open up our Cricut Design Space. And I have grids turned on as default, so I'm going to turn those off first. We will go up here to the pancake stack, move down to settings, and then click no grid. We need this white background for the next steps that we're going to be doing. Next, let's create our shape. We'll start with a circle, and we want to make our circle about the same size we want to cut out. So in this case, I'm just going to do 2-inch circles. Then we need to change the cut line type to score. And Design Space creates a dashed line around our shape. So we need to grab a screenshot of this. We're going to use Command-Shift-4 on our Mac keyboard to change our cursor, and then use a click and drag action just to select our shape and a little bit of white space around it. Releasing the mouse key results in that picture being sent directly to my desktop. So now let's select our shape that's on the screen and turn it back to a cut shape, and then I'm just going to change the color to a lighter color because we're going to be working with black dash lines here in a minute. And let's scoot it here out of the way. Now it's time to go and upload that screen clip I just took. Click the upload button, and then from here we'll find the file on my desktop where I have it set to go to by default when I do a screen clip. It's the last screen clip I took, and load it into Design Space. From here we're going to select the image type Simple, hit Next, and then it's time to clean up our graphic, which is going to be super easy. We simply click on any of the outside area, leaving our dashed lines, select Next. From this screen we're going to save as a cut image, change the name of the file if you want to, and select Next. Now that it's uploaded, we're going to select that graphic again and load it to our canvas. Now it's time to match up our stitched circle with our solid circle. So I'm going to change the size of my stitched circle so that it's just slightly smaller than my solid one. Then I'm going to select both pieces and align them using the center align point. And there they are. Now before I do too much else, I want to remember to attach these two pieces. If I don't attach them, they will not cut right. So we need to move down here, click, make sure both of those are selected, and then click the attach. Now these two pieces will be treated as one when it gets over to our cutting mat. To get our stitched lines to look embossed, we need to change the line type from cut to score. In our layers panel, we're going to select the screenshot layer and then go over to line type and change it to score. Now let's click on Make It. On this page you can see Cricut is now treating those two pieces as one, and it's reminding us that it's going to do both score and cut. Keep in mind here that that scoring wand only leaves a slight impression in the paper. and it leaves an impression that looks more like debossing than embossing. Now, if you prefer to use the cutting tool to give the impression of stitched marking rather than the score tool, all you have to do is come back to your canvas, click on your layer in the layer panels, and then switch the line type from score to cut. On this left view, you can see a line of tiny stitches that were scored, and on the right hand side you can see larger stitches that were cut. Now these cuts and these embossed stitches were made using only Design Space to create that dashed line. But what if you actually used an SVG file to do it instead? You're going to get better results. Let me show you. Now on the screen you're just going to see me loading an SVG file that I created earlier. I like to create my SVG files in a software program called Affinity Designer. So what you see now on the screen is two file types loaded onto my canvas. One was created using Cricut Design Space, and the second one was created in my graphics program. Now we're going to zoom in and look at both of the cuts here and see if there's a difference. So in this close-up you can see that the shape on the left created by Cricut Design Space has less refined cut lines than the one that's on the right, which is an SVG file. Now let's compare after the cut. The ones on top were from the circle that we designed in Cricut Design Space, and the ones on the bottom from the SVG file. Now this one that's in the middle on top, I did create that in Cricut Design Space, and I used pretty much the same type steps I did for all the others you see here, except instead of using dashed marks, I turned them into dots. This also gives a faux stitched look. Let me show you how I did this one. From within Cricut Design Space, we're still going to start with a white background and create a shape. But this time we will make sure our shape is larger than the one we intend to cut in the end. Notice how after we change the line type to score, we have a whole lot more dashed lines around this circle than we did the smaller circle we did the first time. From here we're just going to repeat the same steps we did before, which is to create the screenshot of our dashed line and add that to our desktop. And then we're going to go ahead and change the dynamics of the shape that's left on our canvas so that it matches the other ones we did previously. Maybe we'll make it blue this time just so that we can compare all of them in the end. It's time to go and get the dashed circle picture that we clipped off of the screen, and we're going to clean it up. Then we're going to upload it into Cricut Design Space and then onto our canvas. Now with all three of our shapes on the screen, you can see the one on the far left, the one we just created, has many more faux stitch markings than the other two. And that is simply because I started with a larger circle to begin with. And when I shrank it down, then those dashed lines turned into dots. And so it will either cut dots or it will emboss dots when you put it on your mat. So in this picture you can see the two circles on the top left and the one in the middle on the top are from the faux stitching I created using Cricut Design Space and the scoring tool. The one on the far right on top, I used the cutting tool. And the two on the bottom were scored and cut using the SVG file. So now you can see why I say, yeah, sort of, you can get a similar effect. You can definitely create some faux stitching marks using your score tool as well as the cutting tool. However, they're going to look quite a bit different than what you get using a metal die cut, and that's primarily because of the nature of the beast. The two items just simply create the cuts differently, so you're going to get different looks.